to the Mischief Maker broadcast, where chaos, creativity, and common sense collide. Your host, Joel Freeman, was kicked out of high school in Alberta, Canada. He left home at 17 and hitchhiked around North America as a long-haired hippie and dope-smoking fool. He made a 180-degree change, becoming one of the first chaplains in the history of the NBA. As a professional speaker, Joel has traveled to well over 55 countries. His many books have been published in 28 foreign translations. Pieces from his Black History collection have been seen by millions at the United Nations and many other venues. And now, the Chief Mischief Maker himself, Dr. Joel A. Freeman.
Hello. I don't know what just happened there, but suddenly my computer went down and here we are. I just wanted to say that tonight we're going to talk about Black history. And I'm going to share a little bit about, kind of give you a peek behind the curtain of what it takes to build a collection. And those who are collectors, you'll be on pins and needles. You'll be You'll be right there with me. But it is a challenge to put together a collection and to not just become just to kind of just get whatever comes in. Tonight we're going to have I want to just give an homage to a gentleman by the name of Carter G. Woodson. He put together a magazine, a journal, if you will, every single month. And I have an original journal from back in the 20s, and it's called the Negro History Bulletin for the Association of the Study of Negro Life and History. It's called Asala. And here's an edition back from May 1946. And then we have another edition with Booker T. Washington in the front from March 1942. And so tonight we're going to have a contest. And the contest is that well, you can tell your grandchildren that we've been experiencing some technical difficulties. I'm not sure just exactly what's going on, but anyway, we'll figure this out, and hopefully we can get through the rest of the program. But I have something in my hands here. I have a check that Pearl Bailey was paid for her part in the movie Porgy and Bess. Now here's an album, Porgy and Bess, from the Samuel Goldwyn Company, Columbia Records. On the back, I have signatures of Sidney Poitier, let's see, Sammy Davis Jr., Pearl Bailey, and so on the back of this particular album. The movie Porgy and Bess, here you can see an image of Pearl Bailey with Sidney Poitier, and she has got her hands on her hips, and she's probably getting ready to sing or something. And so anyway, what I want to do tonight is I have the check that she was paid for her part in Porgy and Bess. I'm not going to show you how much it is. What I'd like for you to do is to guess the amount of this check, and write in. And then what I'm going to do is someone is going to win. I don't care where you live in the world, but someone's going to win this, a copy of Hurricane Bigotry, a booklet that I wrote. And I'll send it wherever you are, Japan, Canada, US, UK, doesn't matter. But the person who gets the closest to the amount on this check will win the prize, such as it is. And so get your fingers working. And if you have any questions tonight, I'd like to invite you to share those questions, and if it's germane to what our topic is, we will discuss it. We have something that is known as, it's called the Mischief Maker Show. And people ask, what does that mean, the Mischief Maker? What is that all about? And basically what we're doing is, I'm a chief mischief maker. It's on my business card. And it's basically the curiosity-driven life. It's when a person is looking at things through a different lens, is willing to ask the tough questions, is willing to be asked the tough questions, and is willing to look at things through from a different angle. And that's what we're going to do tonight, is hopefully take a look at a collection called the Freeman Institute Black History Collection. But first, let's visit with Baby Joel, and he's coming right up right now.
Hey guys, Baby Joel here. You know, last night my older brother took it upon himself to teach me about the amount of taxes I'll be paying when I grow up. I got the message after he ate 37% of my ice cream.
That's going to be a regular feature, hopefully. You can give thumbs up, thumbs down, and if you want to see those, but we've going to make that a regular feature of the show. What we're going to do right now is I want to take just a moment before we get into some of the pieces of this collection. And I have over 3,000 items, genuine artifacts, documents. I've done 2 exhibits at the United Nations. Well over 1 million people showed up. And it was just an amazing year back to back. Also have done 2 exhibits at the Clinton Presidential Library. I've done 3 exhibits in conjunction with the White House, the communications agency, and throughout Alphabet Soup, NIH of DC, NIH, Secret Service, FBI, all kinds of different places, and a lot of other venues. And what happens is this all started when I began to study about Black history. And that started when I was working with the Washington Bullets, the Wizards, and the NBA. And the players, they're looking at me like, who is this guy from Canada? He looks young. They wanted to have conversations about things, but it was initially awkward, to be honest with you, from both sides. And so what happened is I began to study. This started in 1980. In all seriousness, I was really getting involved in studying. In fact, that's one of the things that when people ask me, how do I get involved in developing a Black history collection? I say to them, the first thing you need to do is to know what you're looking for. And probably at this time, it's very difficult to start a Black history collection because people are in the know. They're trying to figure out, I'd like to have something for my home in my basement or something like that. And it's just, it's very difficult. And so what happened is I began to For instance, be thinking about Frederick Douglass, let's say, and I'm just saying, man, I'd like to get to know more about Frederick Douglass. And what if I was able to get a letter or something, a touchstone to Frederick Douglass? And what happened is I ended up acquiring a letter, and I'm just going to show it to you. But this letter is from 1888, and it's where Frederick. Oh my goodness, my camera is moving all over the place. Where Frederick is developing a situation where he is being asked by the Library of American Literature. They said, we want to be able to use some bits of pieces from your life and times, and we want to use, let's say, 2 pages worth of information from your book in the Library of American Literature. And so this is a letter where Frederick is basically saying, you have my permission to do so. And here's the volume right here, the Library of American Literature, dated 1889. And then you look here on page 358, and you can see Frederick Douglass, and you can see the article that they had permission to share. And it became a situation where Frederick now had an opportunity to expand his reach, and to be able to have this preeminent amount of literature coming together in one volume and to be included in it. And here he was granting permission for that. By the way, Frederick Douglass, his initial name was Bailey, and given name, I should say. And so he changed his name to Douglass. Now, how did he do that? Well, a friend of his in New Bedford, Massachusetts, had been reading Lady of the Lake. And here's the comic book, A Lady of the Lake by Sir Walter Scott. And what happened is that he in the book there's the gentleman by the name of Douglass. His last name is Douglass. And what Frederick did is he added another S to Douglass and made it his own. So that's kind of a neat, a different approach to the whole topic of Frederick Douglass. Maybe that you and I didn't know at one point, and maybe it's a new bit of information for you. Another thing is that this is a scrimshaw from a piece from a whale's tooth. And we have right here it says New Bedford Wharf, and this young man is pulling a cart, and there's a ship in the background you can see. And basically, what would happen? They had no Netflix, no, nothing except books to read when they're out whaling. In fact, there is a period of time, I'd say from about 1830 to about 1870. That whaling was probably the only spot in all of United States where there was equity across the board. We had Captain Boston. We had some other whalers, and that would hire exclusively Black workers on those ships to go out whaling. Of course, with the advent of electricity, the oil from the whale was no longer needed, and so that whole industry was kind of cut out. We have, for instance, let's see. Here's why did Douglass choose that name? Can you explain why did he want to change his name? Well, thank you, Chuck. The whole idea is many people that were in the chattel slavery of the South. If someone, quote unquote, owned another human being, they would give the last name, Johnson, Thomas, whatever it might be. And so he wanted to get rid of his quote unquote slave name, and he wanted to have another name. And so Douglass was the name that he chose. Now, why did he choose this? Well, his friend in New Bedford said, Douglass is kind of a cool name. I don't know. I don't think there's any special meaning behind it in the sense of some meaning of the name itself or anything like that, but it was just something that's what Frederick chose, I guess, at that time. And then that is kind of like in the biblical, Jacob became Israel, and we have names being changed, Saul becoming Paul, and it's kind of like moving kind of a new chapter in one's life, if that makes any sense. So stepping back, thank you, Chuck. That's a great question. And I'll try to respond to questions as best as I can. Now, and thanks for hanging in there in the glitches, the technological glitches, Chuck, and everyone else who's hung in there with us. So in the whaling industry, that's where Frederick first got started, where he would, the ships were made, and then they'd put a kind of a resin, a caulk, in the seams, and that was what his first job was in New Bedford. After he had come up from the South. And another thing it's interesting, I think, is that in 1844 to 1846, there's about 18 months where Frederick left the United States because he had written the book. He'd named his former quote unquote master, Thomas Auld, in the book. And his friends, white abolitionist friends in the North said, Frederick, you better get out of Dodge. You better get out of town because they're going to gun for you because you've been speaking. He probably was one of the most eloquent speakers, probably in the top 10 or 12 eloquent speakers on the planet. And he had learned, when he's learning to read, he got a hold of the Columbian Orator. And in fact, I have a copy of that in my collection that maybe I'll show in a future edition of the Mischief Maker show. And he began to read the speeches of famous politicians and individuals of note that had published their speeches. And that influenced him. And then, of course, he'd learned about body language, posture. When you're speaking to a small group, you make small gestures. In larger groups, you continue to expand your gestures to embrace the whole audience. And he learned all of that. And then the inflection of his voice, his pregnant pauses, where he was letting something sink in, or his diction, the rate of speech, how fast he was talking, how slow he would talk. All of that. I wish there were some audio recordings of Frederick Douglass just to hear him. We do have one of Booker T. Washington, him speaking about letting the bucket down. It's about, I would say, about a 90-second audio piece of. You can look for it online and find it, and it's quite interesting just to hear his voice. It helps to kind of give a sense of the man, Booker T. Washington. But Frederick Douglass. He was a speaker, a man of note, a man to be reckoned with, someone you did not mess with. And we come on the other side of this particular. Well, I'm not going to play a song tonight. I'm just going to kind of keep on going this evening, Mel, and just to discuss a little bit more about Frederick Douglass is that he went to Great Britain. He went first to Ireland. He was in Scotland. He was in England itself, Great Britain, in Britain and London. And what happened is that there were two women that were, I believe, they were Quakers, and or leaning toward that ideology, that philosophy. And they were so enamored by what Frederick Douglass was doing, who he was, and it was to them and to the world, a gift to the world. And what they decided to do was that they were going to find out what it would cost to emancipate, to free Frederick Douglass. And I can't remember exactly. I think it was probably about $500 US. Maybe somewhere in the range of 180 pounds or something like that. Anyway, they negotiated. There was a lawyer that they negotiated with Thomas Auld, with actually his brother negotiating. And what happened is that they arrived upon a price, and that's when Frederick came back to America. He was free, and that's when he started the Freedom Journal. That's when he began to really take off in terms of the just saying I'm a free man, and no one can touch me, and they can't come and get me from the South and take me back, even though that had happened to even freed black men and women. But it just was an opportunity for him to be able to now go around the North with impunity and just do what he was doing. Now, before we take a break from our sponsor, I got some swag on here, the Rosetta Universe. I want to say this, that, I want to remind you, I have this check. I think we have one person that has, I'm going to cover up the spots here, but we have a check here that was paid to Pearl Bailey for her part in Porgy and Bess, the movie. Dorothy Dandridge, we had Sammy Davis Jr., Sidney Poitier were all part of the movie. And so what happened is that she was paid. I don't know if this was a partial amount or was this the total amount, but we have a contest tonight that whoever guesses closest, and we already have one guess, and I got two guesses. Oh my goodness. Do I hear three? Anyway, someone is going to win this. And if there's a tie, I got 5,000 from Willie. And if there's a tie, there's 10,000 from Clarence. And so if there's a tie, then I'll send as many of these booklets out to people. And I don't care where you live. I'll send it to you free of charge as a gift from me to you. So basically, now we move on. Let's talk about Benjamin Drew. Benjamin Drew wrote a book called The Refugee, and it's or the narratives of the fugitive slave. This was published in 1856. I'll see if I'm correct and my memory's correct. 1856. This was published 4 years after Uncle Tom's Cabin. And what he had done prior to this is he traveled up to Canada, and he was very interested in what's happening to the people who went north. That were, some were stuck in the South. Just everything was against them, and just we can't even begin. There's no way to exaggerate when trying to describe the horrific nature of the slave trade and the chattel slavery, the enslavement. I call it kidnapping. Just to hold people in place and then to use and abuse them on so many different levels. Some were able to leave. Some were not able to leave. But those who were able to leave to go north, the fugitive slave laws drove them into Canada. And so Benjamin went up north, and we have 118 people where their stories, where he interviewed them, and their stories were just, oh my goodness, it's just so compelling, because there were different places that began to, like communities began to develop. We have a place called Africville in Halifax, Nova Scotia. We had Queen's Bush. We had so many other places that began to develop throughout, especially Ontario, and then in Alberta. There was a community about 8 blocks large in Vancouver, British Columbia, but mostly in Ontario. And so what he did is he interviewed them. In fact, he interviewed Harriet Tubman. This is before she was known as the General. That was the moniker that was given to her by John Brown. And so we have here's someone by the name of William Gross. And he said, I was held as a slave at Harper's Ferry, Virginia. When I was 25 years old, my 2 brothers, who were 12 miles out were sent to the ferry so as to catch us all three together, which they did. We were then taken to Baltimore, sold down south, and the reason was that I had a free wife in Virginia, and they were afraid we would get away through her means. My wife and two children were then kept boarders, and I was well used, and so on. Anyway, he ends up escaping, and he tells this incredible story of how he gets north, and he's in jail for a while, and he felt dread at points, and he had served 25 years in enslavement and captivity, and now he was for 5 years. Here's Benjamin Drew interviewing him, 5 years in freedom. There was one gentleman who, within a few years, he owned a home in Toronto, and he owned another place, another home that he rented. This is after a few years. Just the entrepreneurial spirit was released in his freedom. And he had, when he got the shackles off, and he could, whatever he imagined he could do, he was able to move into this whole new arena of life that is just fascinating to everyone who reads this. So Benjamin Drew, it's a book called Refugee, 1856. And this was right in the thick of the fugitive slave laws, where they had slave catchers coming north, and the fugitive slave laws actually made it so that anyone who held, this is why the Underground Railroad is so important, that anyone who was holding an enslaved person who was now free, they would suffer consequences, dire consequences, legal and financial, if they were discovered. And so that's what makes the human drama of abolitionists opening up their homes so intense and so incredible in the 1850s especially. So right now, we're going to take a break from our sponsor, and I hope you enjoy this. Our sponsor is Rosetta Universe, and let's watch this. It's on the other side of the break. I think the break is about maybe 30 seconds. So hang in there. I got something very special for you.
As a modern metaphor for cracking codes in 7 steps, problem solving is less complex.
In 1799, Lieutenant Pierre Bouchard knelt down as they were with the Napoleonic Egyptian military campaign. His assignment was to clear a spot, an area, to build what later would become known as Fort Julien on the west bank of the Nile. He knelt down and he saw some bits and pieces of a stone that looked like this, except it weighed 1,700 pounds. It was 45 inches tall, 30 inches wide, 11 inches thick. And he looked at it. He saw 3 inscriptions on it. Now, he knew what the bottom said, but if you want to learn more about this, go to the QR code at the top of your screen. And once you have seen this, seen the QR code, then what can happen is you can see a little bit of what I've got here outside in Studio A. Check out the Rosetta Universe and take a look at the impact that this can have around the world. So look forward to catching up with you there. Now remember, we have this contest tonight. If you're live, you can participate. If you're not, you can just kind of hang in there, because at the end of the show, I'm going to tell you what is on this check. What was Pearl Bailey paid for her part in the movie Porgy and Bess? And by the way, here is a December 20th, 1959, 2 p.m. Esquire Theater in Dallas, Texas. Here's Mr. Samuel Goldwyn is requesting the pleasure of your attendance at the preview of his motion picture Porgy and Bess. It's an authentic invitation for that particular screening. Now, what I want to get into at this moment is I want to share with you about a very interesting woman. Her name is Fanny Kemble. Frances Ann Kemble. She married someone by the name of Butler, but she was her dad owned Covent Garden Theater. Now, kind of pull up your chair a little bit, and if you want to take some notes on this, you're welcome to. But she is probably, in my opinion, one of the most unsung heroes or heroines of the Civil War and the defeating of the Civil War. There are many layers, many issues that were going on in the Civil War economically. In fact, we know that banks and financiers were funding things in the South. A lot of scuttlebutt was going on beneath the surface in the Civil War. It was a terrible, terrible time, a dark stain on our country in America. And so, but somehow we were able to come through it. And with all our warts and everything else, it's an amazing accomplishment just to not even have the Union broken as a result. But we're still paying the price for a lot of situations that caused the Civil War. But anyway, this woman, a woman by the name of Fanny Kemble, and I'm going to show you her picture. She was a Shakespearean actress. Once again, her dad owned Covent Gardens in London, a famous theater, and they were coming on hard times financially as a theater. And so what happened is that Fanny, she decided she would come over to the United States and that she would do some special events around and, just doing Shakespeare here in the United States. So she traveled all over. She went as far west, I believe it's Ohio. She was in New York, Philadelphia, Boston, all up and down the eastern seaboard, northeastern seaboard. I don't initially she didn't go south, but that's part of the story. And so what happened was that there was someone in the audience. His name was Pierce Butler. He somehow took a fancy to Fanny Kemble. With her British accent, her style, she was take no prisoners type of personality. Wherever she went, she would hold court, and she was just a magnanimous human being. Lived for a while in Lenox, Massachusetts. In fact, there's a street in the Berkshires called Kemble Street, Kemble, named after Fanny Kemble. And her home is no longer in existence. It's been torn down and probably rebuilt or empty lot. But, she lived right there on Kemble Street that was her spot for quite a while. But anyway, what happened is that she somehow Pierce Butler, he wooed her heart, and she ended up coming on board and saying, okay, let's get married. So this is 1835-ish, 36-ish, right around there. And she was, they got married. And I actually have a letter here, which is very rare, where it's signed Frances Ann Butler. And right down, I don't know if you can see it right here, Frances Ann Butler. And that's very rare because when I tell you the rest of the story, you'll understand how rare that is. So, what happened is that she was they're married, and then her husband got news that he now had inherited the plantation in St. Simon Island, there's a place called Sugar Island. You got to go in a boat. It's just a short little place down there. Last summer, I went down and walked all over that region, that area. And it's just fascinating to kind of almost just the vibe of St. Simon Island, and just trying to get a sense of what Fanny Kemble was dealing with. In fact, I'll show you this right here. This is Butler Island Plantation, the former home of Fanny Kemble, and there you can see it on St. Simon Island. And so what happened is that Fanny, her husband inherited this plantation. It was the largest slaveholding plantation in the South at the time. And so what happened is that he got involved. I mean, he went down south, and he was a gambler. He was just a ne'er-do-well in many ways. And anyway, Fanny got it in her mind, I'm going to go down and visit the plantation. Well, her husband did not want her to come. There's probably a number of reasons why he did not want her to come. But the main reason probably is because of the abuse, the horrific nature, and maybe he had, he was, in terms of immorality and things like that on his own, he probably was doing some things he didn't want her to know about. So what happened is that she wrote a book, a two-part book called a journal. Fanny Kemble, her journal, where she journaled her way by stagecoach every day, sharing her thoughts and feelings, maybe the place that she stayed at. And it wasn't a very safe thing for a woman to be in a stagecoach, traveling here and there and everywhere, just all by herself. Maybe there are other people in the stagecoach, but she made her way down. Now, if you're from Georgia, if you visit St. Simon Island, it is a difficult place to get to. You have to, there's water, there's marshes. It was one of the largest rice plantations in the region, and which requires water and land and water, and for the proper growing, it requires locks in the sense of moving the water in and out with the tides, using advantage of the high tide, holding the water in, and at low tide, when it's low tide, and so on. But it's another fascinating thing to see all those locks. So what happened is that she ended up going down there. When she got there, she was just like, what's happening here? And she began to talk to the women and the men. And after a while, I guess it was that the women sensed, the men also, but they sensed a different spirit about her. She's from Britain. She is an abolitionist in probably name only at that point. But that spirit of that abolitionist spirit was inside of her. It was a John Brown type of spirit that was inside of her. It was a Nat Turner type of spirit within her. It was a William Wilberforce spirit inside of her that rejected what she was seeing and what she was hearing. And perhaps women began to open up to her about the abuse that they were experiencing. And little by little, you have a situation where they say, hey, she's now had it up to here. She's like, I don't like what I'm hearing. I don't like what I'm seeing. And so what happened is that then she finally decided, I'm going to confront my husband, which she did. He did not take to that kindly. It was like, what are you? This is why I didn't want you to come down here. This is I didn't want you to be here. And so, and this is the way it is. There's nothing we can do about it. This is the way things function in the South. And anyway, she ended up leaving, went back up north. They ended up getting a divorce. It was such a divide between Fanny and her husband Pierce, that they broke it off. She went back to Great Britain. And she lived there for a number of years. Now, I want you to think about this. She has a journal. She has not published it yet. She has seen, heard, experienced, touched, felt the horrific nature of captivity, of kidnapping, of enslavement. In the Civil War, we can see the pendulum moving back and forth. Looks like the North is winning, the South is winning. The British government, they were actually leaning toward the South. Why? Because they loved the cotton coming from the South, King Cotton. And so what happened is that they decided, well, maybe we should give some munitions, some clothing, maybe food, money to the South for the cotton. Guess what? In 1863, that's when Fanny Kemble published her 2-part volume. Now, in my collection, and my wife and I, we own this collection. In the collection, we have 4 copies of first edition copies of this journal. And the thing about it is this came out at a time when the Parliament was beginning to lean toward the South. It so inflamed the British public that they decided, the British government decided they would take a neutral position toward the South. Now, this is huge because if they had gone all in with the South, can you imagine the impact, the tipping point, tipping the scale over toward the giving the South the advantage? And so I believe that that Fanny Kemble is one that needs to be revered. If you can do some research on her personally, maybe if you live in the United States and can maybe make I won't call it a pilgrimage. It was kind of a pilgrimage for me to go down to St. Simon Island. But if you go down there and just ask questions, I met a black gentleman, a historian. And man, we talked and talked about Phyllis, about Fanny Kemble and the impact that she had on the country, really in a very special way. Mel says the most horrible form of slavery was rice plantations because slaves were knee deep in rice paddies all day long with poisonous water snakes and the constant threat of disease, especially in the swampy areas where the rice was grown. Rice slaves had the shortest lifespan of any type of slavery in the South. I agree wholeheartedly, Mel. Thank you very much for that comment. Very important, very insightful. You can think of Junglefoot in Vietnam, soldiers, dealing with rice plantations and, the water all the time. And of course, the poisonous snakes, as Mel brings out. Very insightful. So Fanny Kemble, she is someone I would say that has made quite an impact. And once again, here's her picture, and here's her as a Shakespearean actress, kind of dressed up, ready to go on stage and do her thing. I wouldn't have been fascinated to have videos of her performing. And by the way, Pierce Butler, his family is just horrific. Later on, there was the Pierce Butler fell on hard times because of his gambling, because of his drinking, womanizing, and all the rest that comes with it. He ended up selling, having a sale of slaves, and they called it the time of weeping because that's when husbands and wives were separated and children from their parents, and it just was horrific, a terrible, terrible time. I've actually been to Savannah, Georgia. On that same trip, by the way, I went up to, they have if you get to Savannah and you see the spot where they have a memorial for that time of weeping, the actual site was a racetrack, and it's about a mile or so away from that spot. And if you drive your car around, there's a spot where a construction company owns some land, and you drive in on a kind of a derelict type road, and when you get to a spot kind of in the middle, and you look to your left, if you're driving in, that's the spot where the sale took place of the slaves. Now, there's another research paper that was written by I think a master's or PhD candidate that says that there was another event that was larger than this time of weeping by maybe 100 or 150 more. And you can do some research on that. But this was a very horrific situation in a time, in a period in our history, a tortured history, something that has vexed our country. A reminder, we have this check. Pearl Bailey was paid for her part in the movie Porgy and Bess. Guesstimates, if you have guessed already, you're now recused the ability to do it, but we have 5,000, 10,000, let's see, 500, 2,000, Ruth, Don Thomas, 1,000, Jack, 500, and let's see, Jasmine, 3,000. Someone's going to win this particular booklet, Hurricane Bigotry, a blues song I wrote, and which we'll be talking about in a future segment. 15,000. This is 1958. She was not the lead. She just giving some hints here. She was. You had Sidney Poitier, Dorothy Dandridge, and Sammy Davis Jr., but she had a significant part in the movie. And this check here, signed by her, not only as Pearl Bailey, but also as Pearl Belson. She ended up marrying the drummer, Mr. Belson, and Louis Belson Jr. And this is a picture of her, and they're I guess they're on their honeymoon or something. And she signed this check, which I've not ever. I could be proven wrong, but and I am probably proven wrong before I even say this. But personally, I've never seen another check or another situation where she signed her name Pearl Bailey and Pearl Belson on the same page. So I'm going to show you that right now. So here you see Pearl Belson, and there you see Pearl Bailey. I don't know if you can see that, Pearl Belson and Pearl Bailey. And I hope you didn't see the number. Anyway, this is a very fascinating thing. Now I want to share something else here. Let's see if I've got it right here. I hope I can. This, by the way, is what's known as a talking stick. This is, in fact, in the textbook Black History 365, which is a book that I co-authored with Dr. Walter Milton. This particular book is 1,248 pages. It is, I'm supposed to, if I do this to the camera, it's supposed to stop that. So I'm going to try that. We'll see what happens. In this book, there are over 2,500 images throughout. And 1/5 of those images have come from the collection, Black History collection. Here you can see some of those images right here. And so what happened is that we came up with this whole idea of a talking stick. And we wrestled with how do you bring civility into a discussion about reparations, let's say, or should we tear statues down, or Uncle Tom, or whatever it might be. So the talking stick, this is from what I can gather by people who are in the know about this, is from the Chukwe tribe of Angola, from probably somewhere around the late 1800s or so, mid to late 1800s. And here you see him. He is playing what we know as a thumb piano. That one of these type of instruments. And so here you can see. I can bring it up close. Can you see that? If I can get it just right. He's playing this instrument called the thumb piano, or I guess thumb instrument or whatever. And what I understood from an expert from Dallas, Texas, she told me that her name is Robin, and she had said that this was a talking stick that was used in tribal councils by a chief or a king, and it's about I'd say 15 inches long, and I don't know if you can see it very well. And here he is; he's playing this instrument. This was used that whoever held this stick had the authority to speak. Everyone else had the authority to listen. And what happened is that the thumb piano, this instrument, meant that he was able to connect with all generations in the community, and that it was he had transcendent not just authority but a connectivity with everyone, from young to old, because music is a universal language. And I just thought, man, that's pretty interesting to have something like that it tells that story. Now, what we use in the curriculum is that when students are discussing this, they first create a set of rules of engagement. This is something I've done all around the world with leaders of multinational corporations, educators, leaders in nonprofit, all kinds of corporations, organizations, where people develop a code of conduct, rules of engagement with each other, made up of we will not statements. And what Walter and I felt would be powerful is if the students would be able to come together and make up a list of things that they would agree upon for the entire year in the classroom, so that when it came to like we will and we will not, like we will respect each other, we will not talk about each other behind each other's backs, we will not, made up of maybe 3 or 4 we will nots, and then maybe another 7 to 9 we wills. And what discussed, and then everyone at the end of that session, all the students know in advance that they agree on every word, they're committed to this, and then they go up and sign a flip chart page and somehow memorialize that, and it becomes the esprit de corps. It becomes the way that they process through difficult situations. And if someone breaks the code that they have created, then they have a method of how the process. Each class figures out how we're going to deal with someone who breaks the code, and so it's just an approach with the talking stick, having the history that is connected to it, and then also now bringing it into the 21st century, into the classroom, and breathing life into the process, so that people can come together and discuss difficult topics like, can a white person ever fully understand the Black experience? Black people in the deadly dance with both American political party machines here in America. Now, if you're in other countries, there might be more political party machines, but learning how to navigate this. And this, by the way, is transcendent. I've worked with people in Sri Lanka, in all across the continent of Africa, in Asia, South America, in the Caribbean, Mexico, and it's just a very powerful process that can be done, even in a family system. If you have a family reunion, or there's issues going on in the family, which is very sad when that happens, because, life is too short for that kind of stuff. But using this talking stick type of process and rules of engagement, maybe coming together and creating rules of engagement. If you have a family-owned business, it's a very powerful tool. I've never seen it fail, in the sense that when people are committed to creating it and then committed to keeping it together for as long as they are together with a common purpose and a common goal. So that's something that was initiated in this particular piece in Africa, in Angola, and the impact. In the textbook, I found something once when I was in Amsterdam, a picture of a king with his subjects, And it's interesting just to see the way the African kings functioned in Benin, Nigeria, Ghana, and some other places throughout the continent of Africa in the kingdoms, because the kingdoms, of course, transcend the current geopolitical lines. But what would happen is that they, in this particular, and I actually had to translate everything, and they had two watchers that whenever the king would drink something or eat something while he's listening to some of the problems and providing insights, that when he's eating or drinking, people could not look at him. And then he had two watchers, and they're like, "I'm watching you." And so people had their heads down; they were turned away, and then he had another person with with feathers or branches going back and forth and making sure in the humidity and the heat that the king is comfortable. Very fascinating imagery that I saw. Now, Mel, let's take a look at the numbers. Do you have the numbers for tonight? And we'll bring this plane in for landing. And then I'm going to show how much this check is. Like, it's all done. So Jack Silverman, 500. Don Thomas, 1,000. Ruth Simpson, 2,000. Getting closer, getting warmer. Althea McDonald, 750. We have Willie Jones, 5,000. We have Clarence Portman, 10,000. Let's see. Next, Juan Carrasco. I hope I'm not. It's $100. Juan, 1958. Good guess. We also have. Is that all? Is there anyone else? Okay. Who said 5,000? It was Willie Jones. Willie, please send in your information, your address, and I'll get this out to you tomorrow. The check is for $5,002.30. There it is, right there. $5,002.30. And once again, signed as Samuel Goldwyn Productions. And you can see on the top of this particular booklet right here, for instance, the Samuel Goldwyn Motion Picture Productions of Porgy and Bess. And there you see Sidney Poitier with Dorothy Dandridge in the movie. And there now you see, again, you got Samuel Goldwyn Productions, Hollywood, California, $5,002. Now, in 1958, it's dated September 6, 1958, paid to the order of Pearl Bailey. Can you see that right there? And so this 5,000 probably could have bought a house and maybe even furnished it at that time. There were homes you could get off Sears and Roebuck. It's just an amazing thing. So by today's standards, for her not being the lead name on the marquee, for her to make $5,000, and who knows if this was a partial payment or the total amount, but that's significant. She was treated right, I believe, by the Samuel Goldwyn Productions for her part in the movie Porgy and Bess. So we're going to bring this plane in for a landing, and check out Rosetta Universe. Right above on the top, you'll see a QR code. It'll take you to a website that has 3 words to it: chiefmischiefmaker.com. And if you're on your laptop, just use your cell phone. Just go right up to the QR code, and it'll take you straight there. But if not, just chiefmischiefmaker.com. Spell it right, and it'll take you right there. And there's a link tree on there, and it'll give you insight into some of the different elements of what we're doing here at the Mischief Maker Show. Thanks so much for your time, for your attention. And like they say on the Disney cartoons with Porky Pig, Eebity Eebity. That's all, folks.
You have just experienced another episode of the Mischief Maker broadcast. Hit the subscribe button. Connect at chiefmischiefmaker.com. Thanks for coming along for the ride. And hopefully, you are now a bit closer to becoming a mischief maker in your part of the world.